squatting. And make you all way bigger. There we go. All right. For those of you who are new to class, welcome. Excited to have you here. Nothing that we do in class should hurt. Comfortably uncomfortable is kind of the most intense sensation we're looking for. I'll offer modifications for things as we go, but you're welcome to modify things in your body as you like. Let's get started with some bodyweight squats. Feet about hip width apart. Squatting down and up. Nice. Look, good. Doesn't matter how low you're going. This is to get us moving. All right, let's keep squatting. To make it a bit more challenging to balance, take the insides of your feet to touch, squatting down and up. Your knees might be touching, they might be separated. Don't worry about it. Do whatever feels more comfortable. Excellent. And we're going to take it into wide sumo squat. So feet nice and wide, toes angling out to the side a little bit. Squatting down and up. Not just thinking butt to the floor, but thinking about trying to open our knees as far back as we can as we're lowering those butts. Maybe already feeling a bit of a stretch in those inner thighs. Michelle, I'm just going to mute you for a second because it's a bit of background noise. But if at any point, if any of you have any questions or comments, you can unmute yourselves or you can chat if you don't like to unmute out loud. All right, last 3, 2. Last one, we're gonna keep our hips low and then flutter your knees forwards and backwards like your legs are made of jello until they feel like jello. That's 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shake out the legs. Take your feet a little closer. Give me a couple hip circles. And then other direction. Right, then we'll do knee circles to the outside, alternating legs. And then take them to the inside. And we're gonna shift all of our weight to our right leg. Start warming up our hip rotators, starting with that left knee in the front, left knee right in front of the left hip. Knee stays in the same spot, and we're gonna swing our foot side to side, rotating thigh to the outside, thigh to the inside. You can have a hand on your knee if that helps it stay in the same spot, or you can just do hands in the air. We want both of our hip bones staying level so our hips aren't moving, just that left leg. Looking good. We're gonna keep doing this same leg, but instead of having the knee in the front, we're gonna open up the knee out to the side a little bit, and then swing our foot like a pendulum up here. So knee is still in the same spot, hip bones are still pointing forwards. Looking good. Then same leg, we're gonna drop the knee, so it's right under our hip. Or if you want this to be a little harder, you can extend that knee backwards just a smidge. So it's either right next to that right knee or a little bit farther backwards. And then from here, we're gonna swing our foot side to side. Now our thigh is rotating to the outside, to the inside, still trying to keep that right knee just about in the same spot as we're rotating our thigh. Okay, good. Making sure our hip bones aren't moving. 3, 2, 1. Shake up the leg. Same thing on our right leg, starting knee in front of our hip. Knee hangs out in the same spot as we swing our foot. Side to side. Hip bones pointing forwards. Very good. 3, 2, Same leg, but we're gonna open the knee out to the side, keep that little pendulum foot swing going. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we're gonna drop that right knee down, either right next to the left knee or it can be a little bit farther backwards. And then we're gonna swing our foot side to side. Thigh rotating to the outside and as much towards the inside as we can without letting our hip bones move. Get number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and shake out that leg. We'll work on our hip flexor strength, shifting our weight to that right leg. Left leg is going to be nice and straight. We'll point those toes, keeping our hips nice and flat. We're going to lift our leg as high as we can. Lower it down, doing these slowly, so you should be feeling a squeeze through the front of the hip and the quads. Holding that leg up just for like a fraction of a second, and then lowering it on down. If you feel any popping in your hip, that is okay as long as it doesn't hurt. If it hurts, I want you to keep it a little lower and work in the range of motion. It does not give you any pain. But popping, snapping, all of that is key. Last 6, 5. Next, everyone's hips are staying nice and level. This looks good. Last 3, 2. Next one, we're going to keep that leg lifted as high as you can, and then just little tiny pulses towards the ceiling. Really working on our end range strength. 6 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg, shake it out. Same thing on our lower leg. Now our left leg is our tree trunk face. Right leg is nice and straight. Lifting and lowering that leg with control. Hip bones staying level. And I'll challenge you to keep that bottom leg straight as well, because we can lift our leg higher if we bend our knee, but if we keep those quads active in that bottom leg and don't let that knee bend, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for the lifting leg. Another 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one gets a bonus round. Keep that leg up as high as you can. Little tiny kicks. 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. Shake it out. Back to that first leg, left leg. This time we're going to kick out to the side. So still keeping our hip bones towards the front. We're going to open that leg out to the side with our thigh facing the ceiling, not the front of the room. Trying to lift that knee up as high as we can without letting our hips tilt. Lower it down. So this should still feel nice and squeezy through the front of the thigh, through our quads, through our hip flexors. Also now the glutes that are helping keep that leg turned out to the side. Okay, good. Nice, even hips all around. They split great. You might find these easier than kicking to the front. You might find them harder. Both are okay. Last 4, 3, 2. Last one, we're going to keep that left leg up. Little tiny kicks towards the ceiling. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax, shake it out. That leg gets to take a break. Right leg open up out to the side. But make sure our hip bones are still pointing forwards. And we'll lift that right leg 8 times. 8, 7, 6, 5. Nice, really nice speed on these. 4, 3, 2. Last one, leg stays up, little tiny kicks, 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg, shake it out. Back to our left leg. This time we're going to kick behind us. These are going to be small because we're going to keep our torso lifted. So we're going to extend that leg behind us. Make sure both legs are straight. Keeping our back flat. We're not going to lean forwards and we're not going to let it arch. We're just going to squeeze our glutes and try to lift that leg as high as we can. lower it on down. You can lift higher if you lean forwards. Not what we're doing yet. So these are going to be really small. This should feel really squeezy in your butt. Might feel a little bit of a squeeze in the hamstrings. Looking good. Still keeping hip bones pointing to the front. It's nice. That's 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Keep that leg up. Little tiny kicks. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shake it out. Switch legs. Right leg kicks behind you. Both legs straight. Both hip bones pointing forwards. Lift that leg up. 8, 7. Feeling the squeeze in your butt. 6, 5, 4. 1, 3, 2. Last one. Keep that leg up. Little tiny pulses for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg. Shake it out. If you want to move near a wall or something that you can have your hand onto for balance, we're going to do a couple floppy leg swings. These should feel easier from a muscly strength perspective. They can be a little awkward to balance if you're in the middle of a room. Starting with our right leg, we're just going to be swinging it forwards and backwards, really loosey-goosey. As big as you want, that knee can bend. Your hips don't have to stay square. I do suggest keeping your foot a little bit flexed. If you point your toes, there's a chance you're going to jam your toes on the floor. Not what we want to happen. So moving through a comfortable range of motion. You get to use some momentum here. It should feel easier than all those leg lifts we just did. Okay, go ahead, slow that leg down for a moment. Switch leg, other leg, forwards and backwards. Nice and relaxed. Okay, go ahead, slow that leg down. We're gonna go out to the side. You got your hands on something, face the wall or your chair. We're gonna give our leg a little bit of a wind up across our body, and then kick it out to the side. So we're trying to get our toes up towards the ceiling on each side. You're facing forwards, arms out to the side. It's usually the most helpful for balance. Good. Go ahead, slow that leg down. Switch to the other leg. Bringing it across your body with a little wind up. Then out to the side. And it's okay if your hips are tilting, if they're unsquaring, if they're squaring, whatever feels comfortable on your body. All right, last 3, 2, 1. Slow down. Let us come down to the ground. We'll do one quick round of nerve mobilizations for our sciatic nerve. So for folks who are new to class, this next exercise is to help our nerves move. It is not for our muscles, and I don't want it to feel like a muscle stretch. Ideally, this should barely feel like anything at all in your body. That's what's going to help us be really confident that we're making our nerves slide back and forth and we're not just tugging on them really, really hard. So what this is going to look like, we're going to lie down on our back, hold it onto the back of the right leg, right knee bent, right toes are going to be pointed. I'm going to start lifting up that right foot, but stop as soon as I feel any kind of a stretching sensation. So I'm not going to be pulling this leg into a really deep stretch. As soon as I feel the beginning of a stretch, that's the stopping point because we don't want to stretch here. We're going to flex our foot, keep it flexed while we drop, point those toes. The toes are pointed while we lift, and then we flex and lower that foot, going through as big of a range of motion as you can, but without feeling a stretch. So even though I've got very flexy hamstrings and can get my leg in really close, you'll notice I keep my knee pretty dang bent. If I straighten it at all, I do feel that stretch, and that's not what we want just yet. Keep on going here. Got another 5-ish on this foot. 3, 2. Last one on this leg. And you can check it out. We'll switch legs. Same thing on the left leg, starting with the left knee bent, left toes pointed. Only lifting that foot as high as you can without feeling a stretch, and then flexing, dropping that foot as soon as you feel the beginning of the stretch. Keeping these really gentle. 5-ish more, depending on how fast you're going. Next one can be your last one. And go ahead, shake out that leg. Let's work a little bit on stretching out our hip flexors. So far we've been using our hip flexors a lot to kick our legs up in the air. Now we'll give those muscles a stretch. These are the muscles that are usually the tightest in our back leg and our front splits. So giving them some extra love is going to make that feel better. For this exercise, everyone's going to want at least one yoga block under the bottom of your hips. If you've done this exercise with me before and know you need more than one block, you're welcome to do more than one block. If you have not done this before, we'll start with one and I'll talk to you about whether you might want to add a block. So block is going to be under my sacrum. So that's the bony part of my hips. If it's under your low back, it's going to be uncomfortable. If it's just under the squishy part of your butt, that's also not comfortable. Bony part of your hips is what we're aiming for. Right leg is the leg we're going to extend out. This is the leg I really care about stretching. We're going to be trying to find a stretch through the front of the right hip. Those are hip flexors. Left leg, you've got options today. Option number one, left knee is bent. We're going to do this for a couple rounds. If you've never done this before, I suggest you do this one the first round, and then you can play with some variations the next rounds. What we're going to do is we're going to pull the left leg in as much as humanly possible. I really want you to try to bring that thigh as close to your belly as you can. What you're going to notice happen is your hip bones are going to start to tilt backwards. This is going to levitate our right leg away from the ground, keeping this left leg snug in as much as we can and keeping that right leg straight. We're going to press the heel to the ground. So this is going to be contracting our glutes. Technically, you might get a bit of a hamstring contraction too. We should be feeling a stretch through the front of the hips. We're going to hold that for about 10 seconds and then relax. Other options you can add on for people who have done this before. If you want to partially straighten that left leg to add a little bit of a hamstring stretch, or totally straighten that left leg to add a lot of a hamstring stretch while you kick that right leg away, those are also options. So picking your leg variation of choice, we're going to hug your left leg in as much as possible. Right leg is straight, no matter what your left leg is doing. And then we're going to smush the whole right leg to the floor. Double check the knee isn't starting to bend. We're going to straighten that leg, point your toes nice and strong. Keep reaching that right leg down for 10 seconds. 10. Actively pressing it down. 9, 8, 7. Next knee. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, relax your legs for a moment. You can shake them out. If you got your right heel on the floor, even though your left leg was practically touching your belly, then it's a good sign. You could probably add another block under your hips to make this a little bit harder as we go forward for our subsequent rounds. When our hips are a little higher, it means our hips tilt a little bit more as we kick our leg away. So that is a way to make it more challenging for you. Bring the same leg 2 more times. If you want another block, you can add it. You did not get your foot near the floor, keeping the current block is going to be better versus adding one. So we'll go back to straightening that right leg. Left knee, you can choose. Do you want it bent? Do you want it kind of straight? Do you want it all the way straight? Up to you. I care more about the stretch you're feeling in the right leg versus the stretch you're feeling in the left leg, so choose accordingly. Hug that left leg in as much as you can. Make sure that right leg is nice and straight. And reach the entire underside of the right leg. Smush it down to the floor, nice and strong. Feeling that stretch coming through the front of the right hip. A little bit of a squeeze through the back of the right hip. Keep pushing that heel down. 8 more seconds. Even if your heel touches the ground, I want you to try to push it through the floor. Last 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax your legs. Shake it out for a moment. Maybe one more round on this leg before we switch sides. The right leg's going to kick out nice and long and straight. Left leg, choose your own adventure. It might be bent, it might be straight. We're going to hug it in as much as we can. And then smush that right leg to the floor, nice and strong. Keep reaching it down, actively pressing it for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax those legs, shake them out. Can adjust your block or blocks under your butt if they kind of wiggled somewhere weird. All right, the same thing with the left leg. So 3 rounds with the other leg. So now left leg is going to be nice and straight. Right leg is the one we're pulling in towards our chest, whether it's knee bent, kind of straight, or all the way straight, whatever version. We're trying to get that right thigh as close to our torso as we can, and then reach that left leg to the floor. But make sure the knee's not bending. I like to extend my toes as far away as we can. Keep pressing that leg down for 5, 4, keep reaching, 3, 2, and 1. That's those, shake them out. Get 2 more times. Same leg's gonna still be stretched. So left leg, kick it away nice and straight. Right leg hug in towards your torso, maybe with a bent knee, maybe working on straightening the leg if you want a little bit of a hamstring stretch in that one as well. And then just constantly reach that left leg towards the floor. Just one big active push. The underside of that leg is active the whole time. 8 more seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wonderful. Relax your legs for a moment. You can give them a shake out if you need it. And last round on this side. Left leg is going to extend nice and long. Hug that right leg in one last time. Hugging that thigh as much as you can towards your chest, and then smush the whole backside of your straight leg down to the ground. Reaching that heel low. If it touches the ground, you want to push it through your mat into the floor. Leg is active the whole time. 6 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax your legs. Shake them out. Go ahead, plant your feet. You can remove that block from under your butt. Windshield wiper your knees side to side for a moment. Let some tension out of your hips, out of your glutes. And let's give hip flexors a little bit of a break. We'll still work on our glute strengthening, but now we're going to be glute strengthening to help prepare for our inner thigh stretches. So glutes are really valuable for multiple positions in our splits, but we need to make sure we train them in the different ranges of motion that they're meant to support. So for our middle splits, we'll do a couple of different variations of fire hydrants. And since everyone's got blocks, why don't we do these with the block under our left knee? So we've got a little bit more room for that right leg. So I'm going to be in a tabletop position with the block under my left knee. My right knee is free to move. Your challenge is keeping your hips square to the floor, meaning both hip bones pointing towards the floor. If you are peeing, I want you to imagine that you are peeing right next to that left knee. We are not going to pee out to the side, even though this exercise is called fire hydrants. You're going to lift that right knee out to the side, not so much that our hips tilt. So we are not going to direct our pee stream to the right. We're going to direct our pee stream down towards that left knee. This means both butt cheeks are staying level. This should feel nice and squeezy in those right glutes. And we're going to drop that knee. So a little lift of that knee out to the side as far as we can without letting our hips tilt. And then closing that leg. 8 to 10 times on the right leg. And then we'll switch sides. Nice. Keeping both hip bones pointing towards the floor like headlights. Good. Okay, nice. Once you've done 8 to 10 with the right leg being the lifting leg, you can shake it out and switch to the other leg. Moving your block under the other knee. Nice. Looks like they're keeping their hip bone pretty dang controlled, which is great to see. We will do some stuff where we let our hips tilt in this position, just not quite yet. Once you finish with your 8 to 10 on both sides, you're welcome to push back into a downward dog if you want a bit more of an active recovery break where we're getting a little hamstring and calf stretch. If you want to give your legs a total break, you can hang out in a child's pose, something that's not leg intensive. Or you're welcome to take another feel but good pose if you happen to have other things that you like. Ooh, reclined here. I like that one. All right, so go ahead and make your way back to your tabletop position. Let us add on to our fire hydrants. We're gonna add a little bit of hip rotation, which is a variation of some of the drills we did in our warm-up. So hip rotation is really nice to work on in general when we're doing our splits, both our fronts and our middle splits, because the muscles that help us rotate our thigh bone in space are often the stabilizer muscles in our hips. And when they are not engaged and firing appropriately, our body does not feel safe. And even though in something like a front splits, we don't want our thighs to be rotating in a funny direction. If our hip rotators aren't firing to keep our hips nice and stable, our body's not going to let us go to our maximum end range of motion because it doesn't feel safe. So that's one of the reasons we do so many exercises like these. So back to our kneeling position with that left knee on the block. Right leg is now free to fire hydrant out to the side. Just like the last time, we're going to lift our knee. Keeping that knee lifted, we're going to rotate our thigh towards the ceiling. That's dropping our foot towards the floor. Then we're going to rotate our thigh towards the floor, reaching our foot up. Bring that thigh back to the front, and then close the leg. So we're lifting the knee, toes towards the floor, toes towards the ceiling, toes behind me, dropping the leg, trying to keep the knee in the same spot in space as we're doing that thigh rotation. Just like when we were standing, we're trying not to let our knee float on around. Particularly in this drill, it has a tendency to droop as soon as we try to lift the foot. So your challenge is keeping that knee up and not just letting it collapse towards that other leg. You see 5 to 6 on each leg. So lifting the knee, then rotating your thigh down and up or up and down. You can do either direction as long as you hit them both. And closing the leg. These should still feel nice and squeezy in our outer hip. It's gonna feel like a lot in your glutes, even though some of the other smaller muscles underneath our glutes are helping rotate where our thigh bone is facing. Okay, good. And we're still keeping both hip bones towards the floor, just like the last one. And once you've done your 6 on the right leg, you can switch to your left leg. You can shake it out a little bit in between. Second side's always a little bit harder because those glutes were already firing to not let your hips tilt in the first exercise. They're a little pre-fatigued. So you can take your time to transition the other leg if you want to. Nice, Michelle, Catherine, really great control. It's good. A nice level. And once you finish with both legs, you're welcome to down dog, you're welcome to child's pose, butterfly, any kind of a feel-good stretch while we wait for everyone to get caught up. Or you can just grab water. You don't have to fill every waking second with stretching. Alrighty, looks like everyone's caught up. Last thing we'll do in our tabletop position, we're working on our glute strength for both our hip flexor stretch and our inner thigh stretch. So we're gonna hit both of those positions. You don't really need a block under your bottom knee for this one. It doesn't give us a lot of extra help. So option number 1 is doing this drill in a tabletop position, keeping our back in a neutral position. We're gonna kick that right leg up behind us, right leg straight, lifting it as high as we can without letting our back arch. So if you want this to be more of a challenge, you can tuck your tailbone a little bit. So this should feel extremely squeezy in the back of that right leg in the glutes. You may or may not actually feel a stretching sensation through the front of that right hip, even though it's getting a stretch. You're gonna try to keep that leg as high as you can, but not let your hip bones tilt. So we're gonna keep our butt cheeks nice and level as we bring that knee forwards out to the side without letting our right hip bone tilt. And then I'm gonna kick that leg backwards, bringing my knee forwards and backwards. If you need a little bit of physical support to see whether your hip bones are tilting, you can place a yoga block on the back of your hips, and your goal is to keep the block flat while we lift that leg and bring our knee forwards. If we start to tilt our hips when we bring that knee forwards, the block is going to roll off of our butt. So keeping both hip bones towards the ground as we keep our thigh and our knee as high up in the air as we can. 8 times on the right leg and then 8 on the left. Nice. Anna looks good. Michelle, nice control. Italian, Shermaine looking nice at level 2. And then McMessina, not sure what your name is, just because that's what your Zoom is showing me. But in the pink leggings, you're looking like you're keeping your hips nice and square as well. Catherine, Aya, very nice. So when you've done 8 on the right leg, you can do 8 on the left. Catherine, I see your stretching assistant is checking on your form. Excellent. Nice, Natalia, that looks great. I like, can't see your hips moving an inch. Nice, everyone's hips staying nice and level. Once you finish on both legs, go ahead, relax on your back for a moment. We'll just do a couple of more passive glute stretches to give them a break. Might throw on some extra stuff while we're down there. All right, if you're all done, go ahead, come down to lying on your back, making your way to a figure 4 stretch. We're gonna lift our right ankle, cross it over that left knee. So our right knee is bent out to the side. And our goal is finding a stretching sensation through the outside of the right hip. So if this is very easy for you to do with your feet on the floor, you can pull that whole shape a little bit closer to your chest. You can even use your right elbow or your forearm or your hand to gently smush that knee just a teeny bit farther away from your chest if that feels good. They only want you to do that if it feels okay on your knee. Good. Things that you can add to this position. Right now, it's still a passive stretch. We'll make it a little bit more active in a moment, but you can add a little bit of a rock side to side, which can feel nice in our low back. Or as we drift our knees a little bit farther away from our hips, you might notice that stretch gets more or less intense through the outside of your hips. If you find a position and you're like, ooh, that's a way deeper stretch, you can hang out in that position and enjoy your discovery, or you can keep that movement going. You're also welcome to add a hamstring stretch by straightening that left leg and trying to pull that left leg in as well. Depending on your hamstring flexibility, this may be quite intense. This might not be that intense for some of you, but it is an option for those of you who like to multitask. All right, let's work a little bit on strengthening in this position. So right now we've got muscles in the outside of our right hip, mainly most of our glutes are in a lengthened position. We're gonna take our right hand just to the inside of that right knee. I'm not gonna push with that hand, it's just gonna hang out in this position. And then we're gonna contract the muscles in our inner thigh to resist the stretch. So my right hand's gonna stay in the inside of the knee. I'm gonna smush the inside of the knee into my hand. So I feel those muscles in the inside of that thigh contract. I'm gonna keep pushing my right knee into my hand for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that stretch. And then we're just gonna take that hand off, hold the passive stretch for a little bit more. You might be able to pull your figure forward a little bit closer towards your chest if relaxing those muscles. That's a little good. Yeah. And we're going to do different kind of contraction. This time we're going to contract those outer hip muscles, the ones that are currently in the stretch. Strengthen them while they're in this lengthened position. This time my right hand, instead of coming to the inside of the knee, I'm going to bring it to the outside of the knee. And the hand isn't going to push. It is just here as a cue. Then I'm going to take the outside of that knee, push it into your hand. Let us smush your knee into your hand, feeling the extra squeeze in that right hip. Outer hip for glutes for 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg. See if you can pull it in a teeny bit more into your passive stretch. Okay. And then you can release, unpretzel your legs, give them a little bit of a shake out. We'll do the same thing for the other leg. So we're going to cross left ankle over the right knee. Maybe try to pull that whole figure 4 shape a little bit closer to our chest. This time we want to be feeling the stretch in the outside of the left hip. So mostly left glutes. There are a couple other muscles in that area you might be feeling it in, but really outer left butt is what we're looking for the stretching sensation. And just like on the first side, you might want to experiment with rocking side to side. Maybe holding a position if you feel a little bit better stretch. Maybe straightening that right leg a bit or all the way if that feels like a nice addition. You could do both of those things. You could have the right leg straight while you rock. Up to you. And we'll do a little bit of strengthening for both sides of our joint while we're here. First, we're going to take that left hand to the inside of the left knee, so the space between our knee and our chest. And I'm not going to push with the hand, but I'm going to push with the knee. The left knee is going to push into that left hand for 10 seconds. Should be feeling a squeeze a little bit in the inner left thigh for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that squeeze. And then just hug your legs. Hold that passive stretch. Maybe with a rock side to side, or just hanging out and breathing without moving. That works as well. Okay, then last round of contracting, we're going to take that left hand again, this time putting on the outside or the far side of the left knee. Hand doesn't push, but the knee's going to push into the hand, smushing the outside of the left knee into our hand, trying to reach that knee away from our chest. Now we're feeling the squeeze in the outside of that hip for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg, and then you can just hang out in your passive stretch. You might be able to pull everything just a smidge closer to your torso. Seeing how it feels. All right, then you can unpretzel your legs, give them a couple shakeouts. Let us make our way on up to a low lunge. So keep working a little bit on our front splitty type things. So if you have blocks, I suggest having blocks for your hands for some of the things that are coming up. For our low lunge, we're going to want our left knee on top of that left heel. Right knee can be on the floor. If you've got knees that are a little on the more sensitive side, you might want to roll your mat once or twice so they have a little bit more squish. Or you can throw your knee on a yoga block. Usually even that is a little bit softer than the floor. If your knee still doesn't feel good, let me know. This is one of the things that sometimes people's knees don't like, and we can modify accordingly. So once you've got your legs set up and any kind of padding you'd like under that back knee, we're going to double check on where our hip bones are and if they are giving us the best stretch. So first, we're going to play with opening and closing our hips to make sure that they're staying square. Ideally, for what we're working on today, we want both of our hip bones pointing forwards, but to find what we don't want to happen, we'll open those hips out to the side. So finding my hip bones, either holding my hands on my hips, I happen to be a big fan of using finger guns. We're going to rotate our hip bones forwards, finding the stretch through the front of the hip flexors, and opening them out to the side, losing the stretch in that back leg. As our hips twist to the front, we're getting a nice stretch. They open out to the side a little bit easier. We don't get as much of a stretch in that back leg. Go ahead, twist your hips open and closed a couple times. Still keeping our torso as lifted as we can. And let's go back to hip bone pointing to the front. And then we are going to alternate, pointing our hip bones down towards the floor. So when we rotate our hip bones forwards to point them towards the floor, this arches our low back. We lean forwards, we lose some of the stretch in the back leg. But when we try to lift our hip bones, like we're rotating our hips backwards in space, that's going to give us more of the stretch through that back leg. So go ahead, point your hip bones down towards the floor, and then try to lift them up as if they were going to lift towards the ceiling. They don't actually lift that high. Alternating, tucking our tailbone, lifting our tailbone, flattening that low back, letting it arch. Or you can think about leaning back with your chest, leaning forwards with your chest. That can also help our hips rotate a little bit. All right, then we're going to come back to hip bones lifted as much as we can, tailbone reaching down, chest lifted, so shoulders are on top of our hips. Hip bones are pointing forwards. This is the most square we can get our hips. So this is the best stretch we can be getting in that back leg. From here, to make this harder, we're going to tuck the back leg toes, those right toes. Try to straighten that knee, then bend it back down towards the ground. Option number one is lifting our hips as we do this. So we're going from a kneeling lunge to a standing lunge. Option number two, a little bit harder, is trying to keep your hips low, just floating that knee up and down. So not letting your hips move, but that leg might not go all the way straight. So if we're straightening all the way, our hips might be lifting and lowering. If they're not lifting and lowering, which is a bit more challenging for the muscles in the front of our hips, that knee might be lifting just a teeny bit. Both of these, we're strengthening our quads. Technically, we're strengthening our hip flexors a little bit as well. Okay, another 3, 2, and 1. And you can relax that right knee on the floor. Give the back leg a break. Straighten that front leg as much as is comfortable. That could be all the way straight. That could be micro bend in the knee. Then keeping our back flat, we'll find our forward fold. Okay, good. And just like when we were in our lunge, if you want to experiment with opening your hips coming out of square, then pointing your hip bones forwards, just seeing how that changes the stretching sensation in the front leg. For most people, you'll feel more of a stretch with those hip bones nice and square to the front. If you really unsquare them a lot, you might notice that the stretch starts to move to the inner thigh. This is a bit more what we feel in our straddles. And then let's come back to both hip bones pointing forwards. A little bit of strengthening while we're here. And if this gives you any knee discomfort at all, I want you to bend the knee until your knee no longer feels uncomfortable. But if it feels okay to do this with a straight leg, you're welcome to keep that leg straight. Keeping our forward fold. So we're going to kind of try to keep a stretching sensation in the back of that leg. We're going to smush that left foot into the floor until you feel the back of that left leg, those hamstrings contracting. Keep smushing that foot down for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that left leg. You might be able to lean just a teeny bit farther forwards. Nice. Once your body gives you permission to relax. Let's get. All right, let's keep that front leg as straight as is comfortable, but we're going to lift our torso on up just to make it a little bit easier to make sure our hips stay square as we slide out into our front split. So you can either slide your left foot forwards or tuck your right toes and slide that right leg back into our front split. We're going to keep our torso lifted, so shoulders are on top of our hips and both hip bones pointing to the front, at least for today. So for our front split, we want to still feel that stretching sensation through the front of that back leg. Those are our hip flexors. Some of you may or may not feel it through the hamstrings in the front leg, depending on what is more or less flexible for your body. Let's get breathing here for about 20 seconds. If you would like to make this extra challenging on the back leg, we can make it more active by tucking the back toes and trying to lift the back knee off of the ground. Even if that knee is bent, just by trying not to put weight in it means that back leg, technically the front leg too, is a little bit more active. Okay, good. 10 more seconds here. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, And one. Slowly come on out. Find a way to bring your butt back down to the ground. Shake out your legs, maybe a little shake break. Just need a little windshield wiper. Just make them pencil out. Your legs feel uneven now that we did a whole lot for hip flexors on one side, hamstrings on the other. We will even things out. So we'll go through that same routine with the right leg in front or whichever leg you just had in the back. So make sure you've got the new leg forwards. Coming to our low lunge position. That right knee is on top of our ankle. Any kind of padding that you need under that back knee to make sure it still feels okay. And once you're in your lunge, we're going to practice opening our hips out to the side. So hip bones are pointing at a diagonal. And then closing our hips. So hip bones point straight to the front. Maybe with hands on your blocks for balance, or they can be on your front thigh. Just paying attention to how this feels in that back leg. Noticing how we lose a little bit of the stretch in the front of that thigh. We get a little bit of it back when we point those hip bones forwards. Okay, and we're going to come back to hip bones pointing forwards. Then we're going to play with tilting our pelvis forwards and backwards. So trying to rotate our hip bones down towards the ground, arching that low back, losing the stretch to the front of the hips, then tucking our tailbone, trying to lift our hip points up towards the ceiling. Lifting our tailbone, tucking our tailbone, noticing how this is changing the stretching sensations we're feeling through the front of that back leg. And we're going to try to keep those hip points lifted and pointing forward. So keeping all that stretch that we can through the front of that back leg. To make this even more active, we will tuck the left toes and start for our knee lifts. So option number one, leg is going to straighten all the way. Those hips are going to lift a little bit. And they're going to drop when that knee comes down to the floor. Chest is staying lifted the whole time. Option number two, we try to keep our hips low and just barely take that knee off of the ground. If you can straighten the leg all the way, great, go for it. But don't worry if it doesn't go all the way straight. Get 6 more lifts of that back knee. And 5, nice, keeping those chests up. 4, 3, 2, last one. And you can relax that knee down on the ground. Go ahead, straighten that front leg as much as is comfortable, whether that means straight or a little bit bent. Then keeping our back flat. We're going to rotate our hip points down towards the floor. So the bony parts of the front of our hips are trying to point down towards our mat. Feeling the stretching sensation in the hamstrings, the underside of that front leg. And you're welcome to open your hips out to the side and then point them to the front if that felt helpful on the first side. If you'd like to just hold your deeper stretch with your hips square, you are welcome to do so too. I know some of you like to wiggle while you stretch. We'll come back to our square hips position. So both hip bones facing forwards, and technically a little bit down towards the floor. Getting ready for our foot smush. So our active hamstring contraction. Right now our hamstrings are in their stretch position. To make them contract while they're in this position, we're going to push that right foot into the floor, bending the knee a little bit if it feels uncomfortable on the knee. Keep pushing that right foot down for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that leg and maybe lean just a teeny bit farther forwards if it's feeling a little better now. Okay, good. We'll keep that front leg extended nice and long, but lift our chest on up and start to slide out into our front split, making sure both hip bones stay pointing towards the front and they don't start to open out to the side. We're keeping shoulders on top of our hips. Hands can be on blocks, they can be on your hips. You're always welcome to have a block under that front leg for support if that feels better for your body. Be here for about 30 more seconds. Okay, good. Great, keeping those chests lifted. Optional challenge for the back leg. If you want this to be more active, you can tuck those left toes. Try to keep that left knee off the floor, even if the knee is bent. If it feels still pretty easy. You can try to straighten that leg. Breathe in here. Last 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Slowly come on down. Back to the floor. Give your legs a little bit of a shake out. Get those knees the windshield wiper. Just enough middle inner split or middle thigh middle splitty stuff to make our straddles feel a little easier. We can work on some of our standing split variations. So starting in a Frogger stretch, we're going to open our knees out to the side. So knees are going to be bent, knees in line with our hips. And if you've got sensitive knees, you can roll your yoga mat a couple times to give them a little bit more squish, or throw pillows under your knees if that feels good. But our goal is to feel a stretching sensation in the inner thighs. Those are our adductor muscles. If you feel a lot of pinching in the outside of your hips, please let me know. Legs look good. If it feels nice to rock your hips forwards and backwards, that can be a nice movement option that sometimes feels good in your hips. Sometimes adding movement while our muscles are at that end range position just helps remind our body that we're totally in control here. We can come in and out of the stretch at will. It lets our nervous system stop freaking out quite so much. It realizes that we're strong and capable of moving in this position. Looking good. We're gonna bring our hips back in line with our knees. If you are doing that little rock forwards and backwards, if that felt good, we can also add working on our hip rotation here, keeping our knees in the same spot. I'm gonna try to lift my right foot up, my left foot up. As we lift our foot, our thigh is rotating towards the floor. So this is our internal hip rotation. And I want these to be small. If you can get your foot really high up, that means you should push your butt farther back towards your feet until it is harder to lift your feet. If you can barely lift your feet off of the mat, that is okay. That is how hard I want this exercise to be. Looking good. So we're alternating legs. Technically, you could do a bunch on one and a bunch on the other, but I like to alternate. Go ahead and do one more on each foot. Then come on out for a moment. And then we'll just do one longer-ish hold for our inner thighs. That can either be a Frogger stretch like we were just doing, or if you want to do a middle split with pretty minimal middle split warm-up, we did a lot of glute stuff earlier, but inner thighs might still not be feeling super warm. You're still welcome to do a full middle split. We'll be holding for about 30 seconds. If you are doing a full middle split, I want you to keep your knees and your toes pointing forwards. If you're doing your Frogger stretch, you're gonna do the exact same thing we were just doing. Still trying to find our stretch through the inner thighs. Hanging out for about 30 seconds. Okay, good. And for folks who your legs are straight in your middle split, if this ever feels uncomfortable on your knee, you're always welcome to have blocks supporting the weight of your inner thighs, just like you can have blocks under your thighs when we do our front splits. Sometimes this makes it feel a little bit more relaxing. 15 more seconds in your shape of choice. Good. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Slowly come on out. Make your way down onto your butt into a straddle. So we're gonna open our legs out to this side, keeping our back flat. We'll walk our hands forwards. And if it feels like you can't reach forwards at all, you can sit on one or both of your yoga blocks. And in our straddle, we should be feeling the stretch either in our inner thighs or our hamstrings, possibly both of those things. And if you want to add some movement, you can walk forwards or side to side. Oh, thanks for that stuff, Catherine. We'll walk our hands over to the left leg, over to the right leg. If you want to experiment with a different torso position, instead of keeping our torso angled towards the floor, we can reach one arm overhead. If we were reaching that top arm down towards our toes, the chest is facing to the front. And then swoop down to the floor, open our chest over to the other side. Okay, good. We'll go over to each side just one or two more times. All right, then instead of staying in our straddles forever, we're gonna come on off to standing. We will end with some standing shapes. So for these, I would suggest using a strap. For those of you who have very flexible hamstrings, you don't need a strap, but I'll be demoing with a strap, and you can easily see how you could just grab your foot instead. We're gonna be trying a couple of different shapes standing. You can choose to do these in the middle of your mat, or you can do them leaning into a wall. Leaning into a wall is nice because then we get to play a little bit more with the leg flexibility without worrying about balance. But if you've done this before and you want to work on the balance component, you do not need to do this near the wall. So up to you. But we're going to start with the strap on one of our feet, kicking that leg forward, getting that leg all the way straight first. And then I'm going to open the leg out to the side. And then to lift the leg higher, instead of, we are going to lift the foot up, but we are going to tilt our hips. So I'm going to hoist my hip bone up towards the ceiling as I lift that leg. If you can grab your foot or your calf, you can grab your leg instead of using the strap. Using the strap makes it a little bit easier to get that leg up. Nice, Michelle, good, nice. Yeah, great. Yes, Diana. Beautiful. Let me see the same one on the other leg. We'll add on. So strap on the other foot, or you can grab the other foot with your hand. Trying to get it straight to the front first, straight out to the side, and then tilting our hips so they're off at a diagonal. This could mean leaning sideways a little bit too. You do not have to keep your torso totally upright, although that is a variation of the shape you can try. Look, nice. All right, go ahead and lose that leg for a moment. Then to turn this into a tilt, so the category of shapes we were just doing is more of a Y scale with our leg lifted and our torso lifted, but a variation that's a little bit more the inner thigh flexibly turns this into a tilt, which is a little bit more of a standing straddle to the side. To go from that position where we've got one leg up, either our hand on the leg or a strap on the leg. Yeah, we want to make sure that bottom leg is turned out. So instead of my bottom leg toes pointing forwards, I'm going to rotate them out to the side. And I'm going to lean my torso sideways and bring this foot across my body. I'm going to karate kick my leg towards my torso while I am leaning into the wall. You can grab your hand holding onto the leg. You can have your strap on the leg. But the biggest difference is instead of that left leg being on the left side of my body, I am pulling it across my body. So you should be showing your crotch to your audience. Crotch to the audience is how you know you've got that leg far enough across your body to turn this into a tilt. Nice, Anna. Yes, Natalia. Yes, Anna. Awesome. So this is a really cool move. It also can make you look more middle splitty than you are, depending on the angles. The downside, some of you may have realized, it takes a lot of active flexibility to keep your leg up, even though your arms are doing all of the work. Let's try that with the other leg. So either strap holding on to that foot or a hand somewhere on that leg. We'll open it up out to the side, just like the last shape that we did. And we're gonna lean over to the side, tilting our hips as much as we can. And then I'm gonna kick that leg across my torso, either using my strap to hold onto the leg or my hand to hold onto the leg, making sure my bottom toes are pointed out to the side as opposed to forward. So both legs are turned out quite a bit. Nice, Anna. Yes, Natalia, good, kicking that leg across. And aesthetically, you guys are all getting the base shape of this. You can play with whether or not we are keeping our torso totally parallel to the floor. You can play with trying to lift your torso. Eventually, you can come to grab the leg in front of your body, behind your body. Lots of variations of things you can do with your arms. Won't do a ton of them today because we didn't get super warmed up in this range of motion, but I do want to make sure that we play with it just for a moment. Next side. That's it, Natalia. Maybe we'll do a workshop on tilts next month. We don't do these in class quite as much. There you go. Anna, kick that foot towards your chest a little bit more. Yes, yes, good. Flexing with the hip. Nice. All right, go ahead, release your legs. Shake them out. Give me a ragdoll forward fold. So that means knees can bend. This feels like a comfortable amount of hamstring stretch and not something super huge. Then take a couple sways side to side, or bend one knee then the other. We are running a teeny bit over, just as a heads up, in case anyone does have to run to do life things. Don't feel like you have to stay until the very, very end. And then keeping your back nice and round, we'll just slowly start to roll on up to stand. First, starting to stack all the vertebrae in our low back, then taking it up into our ribs, our shoulders, and then our neck. Now wrap up our leggy splitty adventures. Awesome job, everyone. Does anyone have any questions on anything that we did today?
Quick question. In the figure fours, sometimes I get like pins and needles in my feet.
In which particular positions?
In figure four stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
So a couple things that could be, most like any pins and needles in general almost always mean something with our nerves, but figure four or like pigeon particularly, it could be because when we're in this position, our sciatic nerve, which comes out of kind of like the side of our hip and runs down our leg, which is the one we do all these for earlier, sometimes it can get a little bit pinched because of some of the muscles in our hips that are being pulled across that area, particularly our piriformis, which is this really small muscle in our butt that crosses where the sciatic nerve comes right out to our hip. So if you're feeling pins and needles in your feet, I would come out of the stretch, not try to hold it in that position. It's most likely that you've got a muscle in your hip that's compressing it a little bit, and we don't want to push it into that position. And unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do with like bending the knee more or less or adjusting the foot like we can in more of our regular forward folds. It likely just means that you've got a muscle that's a little extra tight there, and we don't want to like stretch it to the point where it's also compressing the nerve. But generally gets better over time as those muscles get a little bit more flexible. Yeah, thank you. Question, good thing we want to be aware of, because generally we don't want to just sit in a position that's giving us pins and needles for a long time, because it's not great for nerve health.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Folks watching the recording or folks who had to jump early, because I know we lost a couple people, feel free to email me questions if you got them. Or folks watching the recording, send me pictures or photos or something via email if you want more feedback on anything. But otherwise, have a fabulous rest of your day, rest of your week, and see you guys later. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.